3,281 pages, but I only managed to finish 7 books. Hey folks, it's Abby from Abby Pellinor, and today I'm going through my June reading wrap-up. So June was a bit of a mixed month for me, not reading-wise, but life-wise. I was so busy. I had a friend come across to York that I haven't seen for 5 years. Then I had to go into the office for a week because my colleagues came to York, and then I went down to Brighton to go see my colleagues. All in 1 month. Usually I do nothing. In comparison, that is a lot. So the reading suffered a little bit because of that, but annoyingly I still read loads of pages. I read 19 more pages than I read last month, but last month I finished 10 books and this month I only finished 7. These are the 7 books, and I'm going to go through them in the order that I finished them and let you know my thoughts. Ace by Angela Chen. This was one of my non-fiction reads that I picked up for the LGBTQ+ Pride Month, but also that was the prompt for the Total Bollocks read-along. This I ended up giving 4 stars. I absolutely loved it. So it's a book on asexuality. The author herself is asexual, so its own voices. It really delves into the societal, reliance on sex selling and how people just don't comprehend why asexual people don't want to have sex. It seems wild to them. I personally am demisexual, which means that I only have sexual attraction to people that I get close to personality-wise. So I fall under the ace umbrella, and this was really, really interesting to read about and to learn more kind of about the history, learn about the culture of people who are fully asexual, and just read a bit more and see some representation on the page, which was nice. And this was also really readable. I read probably this section, walking home from a doctor's appointment, with my head in the book, just walking home, because I couldn't put it down. So yes, if you are at all interested, I highly, highly recommend. This is very, very well written, and I really enjoyed it. Then, Mostly Harmless by Douglas Adams, the 5th book in the Hitchhiker's trilogy, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. I enjoyed this the most out of all of the Hitchhiker's books that I've read. So, yay! 3.5 isn't great, I know, but I have a lot of issues with this series. I listened to this one on audiobook primarily rather than reading it physically. I listened to it while I was at work, and it was read by Douglas Adams himself, and that I feel like made quite a big difference because it was just done well. Obviously it's meant to be a radio production, the original book, the original books, and so just having it read out in this style, he clearly writes really well for radio, so I think you should listen to these rather than read them if you can, and if you can get the ones that Douglas Adams or that the BBC did. Those 2 options, either Douglas Adams reading it himself or the BBC productions. I obviously don't want to spoil what this one's about because it's the 5th book in a series, but originally we follow a human named Arthur Dent, and his planet is destroyed and he ends up going on adventures in space, hating every second of it. It was written in the late 70s, early 80s. There is a quite heavy dose of misogyny throughout the book, but in the way of Douglas Adams himself, probably if he had survived to now, would have evolved and, you know, learnt and changed his opinion over time, but it was just of the time misogyny, you know? Which is the issue that most of us in the Don't Forget Your Towelathon were having with this series. But yes, finally finished the main series. I am going to read the 6th book that was written by Owen Colfer, but it's all done now. Then, 5 stars, Iron Widow by Zhao. Oh my god, this book is amazing. They write amazingly. I did have some issues with this. I'll start the issues first. The relationship in here, this is known for being a polyamorous book, took far too damn long. The end, which I can't spoil for anyone, felt cliche, but could be rectified by the sequel that is coming in 2024. And then 2 of the characters, their relationship develops by learning about the trauma that the other has went through, but at least on the page we're not shown any conversation between the 2 of them that would actually, you know, help the relationship to progress, and that was a problem for me. Other than that, oh my god, it's amazing. I struggled to put this damn thing down. Bless Carrie. I was buddy reading this with Carrie from Caring for Books, and bless her, she managed to rein herself in as much as damn possible. I was behind on the reading because of all the aforementioned nonsense going on this month, and she was having to try not to just read this all in one go. It's very, very readable. Zhao's writing, like I said, they could improve the technicalities of their writing slightly. This is their first novel, but their writing is fantastic. It's engrossing. I struggled to put it down. I adored that we actually just got unadulterated female rage. Usually there's, you know, like, oh, but not all men. No, she just hated all men and had to be proven otherwise, and it was quite refreshing to have that. You know, nice change, nice change. Absolutely, highly, 100% recommend this book. We'll be picking up everything that they release ever again in the future. And thank you for giving me this copy, Carrie. It was gifted to me from her. A signed edition as well, because I absolutely loved it, and it will be a prized possession on my shelves. Then I finished up a series, almost, that I've had on my shelves for a long while, and that is the Red Queen series with the book Warstorm by Victoria Aveyard. So I haven't read the Broken Throne short story collection. I've read the Cruel Prince one, I think it is. Is that what it's called? Cruel Crown. Cruel Prince is by Holly Black. I haven't read the Broken Throne short stories, but all the main books finished. This book, I ended up giving it 3.5. I said this as well on the Total Bollocks live stream. I wouldn't recommend picking this up, like the series up, if you haven't started it yet. It's very cookie cutter, very of its time, you know, like early 10s YA fantasy. And it's also basically an allegory for racism, but it's with blood instead, red blood or silver blood. And whilst Aveyard has learnt, and this end book is much more in depth with the discussions of that discrimination, and I think does it beautifully in this one. It takes a while to get there. That's not a fault on Aveyard, you know, she was learning as she was publishing the books. Red Queen, I think, was her first published novel, so, like, you know, that's totally understandable, but it is a white woman writing about race, and she was a lot less educated at the start. So I wouldn't recommend picking it up. However, if you've already started the series, and if you are intrigued as to where it goes, and you're like, I'm tempted, should I? Yes. This last book is worth it. I know it's huge, it's worth it. Like, I know I only gave it 3.5, which is not that high, it's also not that low. It was just done so much better than the previous ones. I'm so glad I finally read it, and this world does have a lot of depth to it, so it was nice to kind of round that out. So, yeah, anyway. Very glad I finished that series. Something else I'm very glad I finished, coming in at a 4.5 star rating, is the first volume of Les Misérables by Victor Hugo. So my copy is the Wordsworth Classic Editions that's split into 2. So I'm currently reading volume 2, I'm about 100 odd pages in. But yes, it's split into 2 and I finished part 1. This is filled with annotations, like, I don't know if you can see them. Probably not, but it is filled. I was originally buddy reading this with the wonderful Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe. She unfortunately had to stop the buddy read, just life circumstances, and we decided that I would continue on without her rather than waiting for her this time. We waited for a while, both of us waited for each other for a while, and then we decided that I would carry on and Olivia would pick it up at some point in the future, and I really hope you do, Olivia, because I think you're actually going to really enjoy it when you have the headspace to get round to it. This is essentially a book on the French Revolution, essentially. It specifically delves into the personal lives of Valjean and Cosette, as far as I can tell so far. I've not finished the book. And I'm just loving learning about them. Valjean is such a fantastic character to read about. I like fully understand the love for it now. The annotations are because I just was so invested so early on that I was like, I need to write down like my thoughts. I was just... There's so many great quotes in here. I see why it's a classic compared to, so I loved The Count of Monte Cristo. War and Peace, I enjoyed it. It was fun. It dropped down to a 3-star because of the ending. But I am loving Les Mis, whereas War and Peace was just good. So I'm living my best life right now. Very glad that I'm finally reading this. Very excited to continue on with reading volume 2 and to finish off Les Mis this year. Then for a much smaller book, but still a classic, and that is To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. I was gifted this by Caitlin from Mad Cheshire Rabbit, who recently graduated. Congratulations. And this is one of her favourite books. She adores it. She has a tattoo of the lighthouse on her arm. I only gave it 3 stars. I probably would have given it lower if it wasn't Caitlin's favourite. I need to reread this. I made the mistake, for me personally, of listening to this by audiobook, and this book is very much just about the characters and the people, and so that kind of removal from the story and slight depersonalization that happens for me personally when I listen to audiobooks meant that I didn't get that connection that you kind of need for this story to have any sort of impact. I can 100% see why this would be great to analyse, like in a literature environment in the university. There's so many beautifully written lines, so much to discuss on sexism and feminism, and lots of different aspects like that. So I do want to reread this at some point, because I do think that upon reread I'm going to enjoy it a lot more. But unfortunately, first time round I did not love it. So I will be coming back to this one. I now know the basis of the story, I will come back to it and hopefully love it. And then the final book that I finished is Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kuang, the author of Babel, depending on where in the world you are, and the Poppy War trilogy. This is a 5-star read, no one is surprised. Unfortunately, my copy is a bit, bit dilapidated. Check out my little short if you want to see about that, not pleased. The plot of this is a white woman steals the book idea of an Asian woman, they're both American, runs with it and publishes it as her own, and then gets found out, and it's like how she navigates this, and obviously that's why it's called Yellowface. It did feel in some places like it was very much like shoved in your face, the points that Kuang was trying to make, a little more than it felt like it needed to be, but that's my personal point of view. Obviously, white woman, like, shove it all in my face, I require all of it shoved at me, obviously, but at the same time, for me personally, it was just a little too much. It was very obvious what was going on and what we were supposed to think, and Kuang was kind of leading you down that path very determinedly. However, I think that could be quite good for people who are perhaps newer to looking into racism and looking into issues like this. It could be good to kind of hold their hand down this path. So, I won't judge that too much. Also, potentially I needed the hand holding, I don't know. So, but yeah, just FYI, especially if you are not white, and if you're going into this from a minority perspective, like, it's going to feel like it's getting drubbed into you and you're like, yeah, this is obvious. However, it's still a great book. Still absolutely fantastic, that's why I got 5 stars. It really delves into kind of how our main character thinks that she's doing nothing wrong. Her name is Juniper Song Hayworth. Song is just because her mum was kind of hippie-ish, and she originally published under June Hayworth, and when she steals the book she changes it to Juniper Song. At the publisher's recommendation, it was the publisher who told her to do this, because she sounds more Asian and the book was all about Chinese history. And she just so often throughout the entire book just doesn't see that she's doing something wrong. She's like, oh, but the story wouldn't have seen the light of day, oh, but this, oh, but that, and she just is continuously making excuses for her actions, like the most white woman shenanigans ever. And just seeing that combined with the guilt that she feels like she shouldn't be feeling, it's a lot. I highly, highly recommend this book. It's really brilliantly done. It's a fantastic introduction to literary fiction rather than science fiction fantasy from Kuang. I think that she's proven that she can expand her range. I think this was done absolutely brilliantly, and I can't wait to see what else Kuang comes out with in the future. I will pick up anything and everything by this woman because, oh boy, she is a beautiful writer. And yeah, it's just amazing, amazing. And those are all the books that I finished in June. So I did start and make a fair decent dent into The Butcher, Lyriel and Perilous Times. Perilous Times I finished on the 1st of July. But I couldn't manage to finish them. I came home from my work trip on the 30th and was knackered. I wanted to read on the train. I hadn't slept on this work trip, so I was just trying to not miss my stop. So unfortunately I didn't quite finish those. Those will have to go into my July wrap-up. But in total, I still read a fair amount. I'm still quite happy with that. My TBR has grown. I got 16 new books this month. And my average rating for June was 4 stars, which isn't too bad. I did have some that were lower. Mostly Harmless and To the Lighthouse were the worst of the month for me. Neither were bad. So yeah, I had a pretty decent reading month. Let me know down in the comments below what your favourite book of June was. My favourite book of June is either Iron Widow or Yellowface, and I think I'm going to have to go with Iron Widow because it was just so fun. It was like, don't get me wrong, Yellowface, fucking amazing. Difficult decision, but this was just, so yeah. That was my reading month and my messy stack of books. Thank you so much for watching, folks. If you'd like to see what I managed to read in July, my TBR is up there, and if you want to see what I managed to read from the TBR, then please do hit subscribe and you will be able to see that in the next coming month. Thank you for watching, and I will see you folks in the next video. Bye!